I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, there were 6 of us children, and sometimes, and I can still hear my mother saying this, my patience is growing thin. That was a sure sign that we better shape up, because what was to follow would be unpleasant. Now, I have to be honest with you, there were times when we tested even that.
Yeah.
And we suffered the consequences. I suspect that some of you have also had that experience in one setting or another. Life does that to us, and we are taught to live with patience, but there are occasions and circumstances where patience grows thin. I thought about that, especially as we have been reading from the Gospel of Matthew, all of the encounters that Jesus had with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They were the bigwigs of his day. They were the ones who determined how people lived religiously. And they were very good at it because they took every occasion that presented itself to apply a rule or a regulation. As Jesus traveled around the countryside, there were so many ways in which he evidenced that rules and regulations don't tell us everything we need to know about life. There are some things that are absolutely more important, one of which is our relationships. Our relationships, if they are to be life-giving and uplifting, cannot be based on rules and regulations. They have to come with some other source of support and encouragement for us. I know when these Pharisees wanted to trick Jesus and say, which is the greatest of the commandments, there were 12 of them, and so he could have chosen one above the other 11. But what he did was refer back to an Old Testament saying called the Shema. The Shema is found in the first 5 books of the Bible. And in that saying, the whole purpose of God's relationship with God's people was voiced. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your being. And then Jesus did an interesting twist. He said the second is very much like the first. You shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. You know, we live in a world that struggles with what love means. And I suppose that there are occasions when our patience grows thin with the world itself, because the way the world celebrates love hardly deepens us down at all. It doesn't appeal to the deeper purposes that we want to live by in our daily experience. It keeps us on the surface. And we go from relationship to relationship to relationship without ever contacting the deeper meaning that lies within every single one of us. My friends, I sometimes think that we need to stop long enough to consider what it is that Jesus is trying to say to us. And when we are so busy and moving at such a hectic pace in our culture and our society, how do we stop? Because one thing leads to another almost in a sequence that has no break in it. But if we don't take the opportunity to break, sometimes we miss the most precious experiences in our human and earthly journey. For example, celebrating a baptism this morning. Think about that for a moment. We're here to rejoice in the beginning of a new life. All the possibilities that holds for their future. We want them to know, their parents and their family, and we want the church to know that new life is a gift of God in whatever form it takes. It isn't just the birth of a child, but it's the opportunity for each and every one of us when we are encountered by the God who loves us with a love that will not let us go. Therein lies the opportunity for new life. God is always at work trying to convey to us the deeper meanings of why we're here, why we're connected with each other. It isn't to be found in the things and the stuff with which we surround ourselves. You know, as I age, I think that time goes too fast. And I suspect there are some others who feel that way as well. I feel sometimes that there's not enough time. There's not enough time. But I also know that in the time I have to make the kinds of decisions that make life worth living. It's not just enough to pass time, because we can all do that so easily without any thought whatsoever. I think about Jesus, 3 years for his public ministry. He left his village of Nazareth and began this journey throughout the Holy Land. 3 years. But what was accomplished in those 3 years? Can you begin to imagine that? Think about that. He healed those who were broken in spirit, in body, in soul. He went from place to place and always was sensitive to the deeper needs of the people he encountered everywhere he went. And he raised up that body of disciples to carry that on. And when he sent them out into the world, it was as if he knew they would do just as he had done. And friends, God has raised us up for the same purpose. Think about that. That Jesus can be at work in us in such a way that we are those who share the deeper meaning of life with those in our families and in our community. And hopefully there are enough disciples whom Jesus Christ has lifted up that we share that deeper meaning with the world itself. There is never enough time. But the time we have matters. And as Jesus was encountering these Pharisees and these Sadducees, he was trying to help them catch a deeper glimpse of what it was God really wanted for the human family. You know how much God cares? Think about that for a moment. To send Christ into the world, to have him walk throughout the Holy Land trying to convey a deeper message of what God's love meant to people, to you and to me. What a gift God has given the world. When we bypass that capacity to love God with all that we are and have, and to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, we diminish the world around us. That is not the purpose of God, nor is it the purpose of Jesus Christ. When those Pharisees heard these words, can you imagine what they were saying to each other? When you're intent on tearing down the body of Christ, these words don't make any impact. They don't hit home. And so it was with the religious leaders of his day. If there is one message that I think Christ would share with the world, it would be this. The words he said to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. I suspect his patience was growing thin. I suspect he had enough. Time after time after time, people who wanted to tear down what he believed God wanted him to convey to people like you and me and to the world around us. And when he was asked, what is the greatest commandment? They weren't interested in what the greatest commandment was. They were interested in finding a way to poke holes in what Jesus was trying to say to us and do on our behalf. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And love your neighbor as you love yourself. There is no greater gift that God could have given to us, and there is no greater gift that we can give to one another. Love these children. Love one another. And let this church love you. And let this church love the world around us. Let us pray.